Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to the IP Showcase Theater. Leading off is Wim Vermost from the European Broadcasting Union, and he's going to be talking about a big event that we had just a couple weeks ago in Houston that was all about proving a large variety of different pieces of equipment being qualified for use in modern media networks. So take it away, Wim.
Okay, thank you, Wes. So, welcome, and I'll give you a light introduction in what we've done 2 weeks ago. And actually, it's not just a small thing, it's major. But I'll go to the run-up, why we did it and how we did it. So, to give you a slight introduction, this is where we were half a year ago. We were at Riedel, and we were preparing the IBC 2018 showcase. And on the side, my colleague Yevgen and I, we did some measurements and we were a bit surprised. We said, well, it doesn't look so good at this moment. So we went to the director of the IP showcase and we said, it's quite horrible to connect our name, EBU, to an event like this. And then he said, well, actually, do think about this twice, because there's a draft standard, it just got published. So all the equipment at previous showcases, those were test samples, beta versions, or whatever. So we said, okay, but that's quite horrible, because some of our members come to us and they say, it's there on the showcase, but we cannot buy anything, and does it really work? We have no clue. So, interesting. Then, June 2018, we had our network technology seminar at EBU. And we asked Jack Douglas to talk about 2110 and 2059 interop tests and demonstrations. And he explained how all these things are done in Houston with big events, big load of work for everyone. And then suddenly there was a tough question from the crowd. Somebody asked, well, why are these tests behind closed doors? And other industries do similar tests and they make all those results public. Well, that was more or less a question Jack didn't expect at that moment, and he couldn't respond to this. So all these things are more or less the runner-up of the tested event. So of course, before you go to do such an event like this, you need to define a scope. So we defined the scope, and honestly, I would have loved to have NMOS and all those things within the scope. But if you think logically, it's a huge deal of work, and I'll explain later what is the huge deal of work. So we said, let's try with the basics. So with 2110, with 2022-7, the redundancy, and with PTP. Those are the basics. So we used the data plane only. So in this program, we also said, well, this is probably a 1.0 program, and later on, if there's a recurrent version of this event, other things will be added, but not this time. So EBU and IRT, we joined up, and we created an Excel document full of tests, and then the industry got together and said, well, nice, but where's the test plan? So at that moment in time, there was an experts group joining up, and you see, it's an experts group cross-industry. We joined together and we created a better test plan. Now, the test plan, it's about 18 pages long, and these are just the basic tests. And if you want to see what these basic tests are, there's a website, you can just download the document. Now, a test plan as such, that's nothing. That's just a theory, but, well, in practice, you need to have the people together, you need to have the real network and the real setup. And actually, this more or less represents the setup that we had. You see on top, there are two different colored lines, so that's all about audio, analog digital audio. There was some SDI and Blackbirds going around. There's the big media network and the zoo network. And we also had some reference senders, because if you want to test and try equipment, you need to test it against reference senders and reference receivers. We had some PTP clocks running around to test different types of PTP. At least that was what we were going to try to do. And you see different pods the different pods with the same equipment to run those tests. So for instance, we had a Prism, a Packet Storm, EBU List, and a few other tools at our disposal to run all those tests. Then you see a different pod for Dash 7 testing, and a different pod for audio-only equipment. So the toolbox, I mentioned a few of those examples already. So we had our disposal a bridge tech, a VB440, the EBU Live IP software toolkit, a Packet Storm CRS, SD Poker, Tektronix Prism, and of course, the best friend in town, Wireshark. Not for live, of course, but well. So how does it look like? On Monday morning, it looked like this. This is the Houston place. All racks empty, well, more or less empty. At this stage, we were really nervous because we needed to get all the equipment tested, and we had about 80 different types of equipment, and the test plan of 18 pages describes 50 tests. So you can imagine that we had to run about 4,000 plus tests in 3.5 days. Monday was the setup date, and then we had Tuesday till Friday midday to do all the tests. So we needed to be very efficient in order to achieve the plan. So we created more or less a pipeline in order to be efficient. We had 3 people from EBU, 3 people from IRT, and a few of the vendors that would help us out in achieving the goal. You see here the pipeline started with the nice lady at the back here. There's Sonia. And she was running around to get the vendors in the pipeline to queue up to go through the test. Then my dear colleague Yevgen, at the moment they passed by Sonia, Yevgen switched those guys into another VLAN. So the first task was to change the IP address and the whole setup of the gear. Because this was something that we noticed in previous setups, that for some equipment it was quite hard to change IP addresses, to be flexible in net masks, gateways, and that sort of things. So that was the first stage to be prepared for the test. So what else do you see? I thought at some point we'll never make it. We'll never make it. Because the different stages, we prepared an in the hall, an on deck, and during the test. You see just half of the room, by the way. So, this is a wrong subscript here. So, now you see the racks completely filled. So this is 82 different boxes. 4,200 different tests. We were not able to run these amount of tests without the equipment I just showed you. Now, what else is very critical and never done before is the results of those tests are publicly available. So for all those tests, if it's a ping, if it's PTP, if it's a VRX buffer, the C buffer model, the Dash 20 sender receiver, all those results are noted in a sheet, and you can get a copy here at the booth. And this is what that pod is all about. That pod is all about the tested event. So that's quite unique. A result looks like this. So this is what you can download already or get your paper copy here. So you see all the equipment, including the software and the hardware version. That's quite important. This is a snapshot in time. So probably tomorrow there's even improvement already. But at this moment, when you get equipment with this software and hardware version, these are the results. The green check marks, that's where the test succeeded. If it's a blank, it could be not applicable, maybe for audio devices. Well, Dash 20 video, it doesn't make sense, right? But if it's blank, it could also mean the test failed. There might be a good reason for this. So, the tested program, you can find the catalog here at this URL. Please download it, give feedback. And I want to give a special thanks to EBU IRT. Well, that's ourselves a little bit, sorry for that. But also to all the guys that helped. We had Fox for the equipment to install everything. We had the experts group. Lee was one of the experts in the whole group. Without them, we couldn't have done it. So, from an EBU perspective, this is an amazing achievement of the industry. This is really where we create transparency for all the vendors, for all the members, and for all the guys that will be buying tomorrow in order to get confidence in these type of boxes and equipment. Is there any question I could answer right now? I see very interested eyes.
So I have a question. So what would you do different if you did this again?
Well, I would say I had a lot of questions from our members, BBC, TPC. They said, why didn't you integrate NMOS in the tests? I would say at this stage, knowing how much time and effort it took us, I'm glad we just took a very small scope like this. So that's part one. Part two, I'm not sure that all the efforts we did at this stage we can do it a second and a third and a whatever time. So we need to come up with a smart ID, maybe a PIX document, a document at the end of the standard that every manufacturer can run on its own and be more transparent about the results.
Okay, thank you.